Yeah, Caroline here from 12 o'clock today talking about DIVORCE. Just for now, on BBC WM, I want to talk about your DOG, your dog. We've got Hannah Molloy in the studio. Hannah's from Kings Heath, runs the incredibly named Pawfect Dogsense, which is a sort of dog training academy. Goes out around Kings Heath Park and other parts of her locality, training dogs. So if you've got a question for Hannah, anything to do with about training your dog, maybe you've just had a little puppy at Christmas and you want to know how to bring it up in the best possible way, maybe you've got a bit of an old mutt who needs to be brought to heel, then Hannah will do her very best to give you some advice. 08453 00 9956, or you can drop us an email as well to adrian.goldberg@bbc.co.uk. Now, Hannah, I've got to say, you're a fairly glamorous young woman. You're not the kind of person that one imagines to be a dog trainer. How did you get into it?
Oh, thank you, Adrian. Well, I did a degree in animal behaviour at Aberystwyth University.
Really?
Yeah.
What made you do that?
Well, I think I've always been really fascinated by behaviour and body language anyway. When I was really small, I actually got bitten by a dog. I was one of those cases, at 1.5, I got bitten by a dog on the nose. My mum always says that I've had dog saliva in my blood ever since then. And I actually came across a charity while I was at uni called Medical Detection Dogs, who train dogs to sniff out cancer in humans. And that, for me, was a massive inspirational moment, because I realised that dogs are incredibly sensitive, and they have been evolving with us for tens of thousands of years, and they're getting to the stage now where they can read our body language and they can sense and smell changes in our biochemistry to the stage that they can identify cancer.
But listen, Hannah, when all your mates were going off to university to read English or maths or history or whatever, you went off to read animal behaviour.
Absolutely. And who doesn't love David Attenborough and watching all of those, natural history programmes and seeing the way that the animals interact with each other in different environments? I just find it fascinating. So, I mean, there's lots of different types of dog training that are out there. I am sort of a self-professed dog geek, I suppose. I look at dogs in a very scientific way and kind of look at the way that they interact with each other and try and show humans how to approach it in a slightly more patient and understanding way, rather than using things like aversives and corrective methods.
Aversives, it would be what? Those collars where you buzz the dog and give it a little electric shock when it's misbehaved. You don't believe in that? No,
I don't think there's much need in doing that. I think we threw that book out the window when we stopped caning children. There really is no need to get to the stage where you're using even something like a choke chain, which is just a chain with a ring pull. So every time the dog pulls, they're getting a sharp around the throat.
Don't need to do that.
I know. I've never used that kind of equipment because I'd much rather engage the dog to work with me. We've got, hundreds of breeds that were developed specifically to do a job. And if you can tap into what your dog was bred to do, I think you've got a much better chance of showing them how to live in our crazy human world than constantly punishing and choking and checking them and correcting them all the time.
Really? And you say you were bitten as a child. What can you remember about that incident?
I don't really. I don't remember a lot about it. My mum, unfortunately, my brothers were distracting the parents at the time, and I was left with a rescue dog that they didn't know very well. And again, always a caution to those people out there who do have children and rescue dogs to be very aware that kids have no idea how to interact with dogs, and so you need to have someone always watching if there are children around. But my mum said that she came back in. I guess I must have just been pulling its ears and tail, and she came back in and the dog was on me, and she said that I just sat there and said nothing. I wasn't crying, and I was sitting there as if to say, well, that was rude. There was no need for that. And I've been fascinated by them ever since. The capabilities of dogs really is just endless. You could train a dog to do almost anything.
But it's interesting, you say this with a research background, having done a degree, that you don't believe then, as I think many people do, and I've had dogs in my life, where that sometimes a sharp whack or a little bit of threat can work with an animal to ward it off from doing foolish things. But you're kind of like a nice liberal mummy. You don't believe in smacking your children, do you? And you don't believe in disciplining your dogs in that way.
No, I mean, I'm a super nanny for dogs in that way. The worst thing I would ever ask you to do, and I think the worst punishment you can ever give a dog, is to take your eye contact away, ignore it for a minute or two, or maybe isolate it and put it in another room. Dogs are social. They really want to be with you you all the time, and the worst thing you can do to it is ignore it and say, no, that's not appropriate, I'm not going to be with you for a minute or two. You have to understand that negative training methods, they do work. I'm not going to say that correcting your dog doesn't work. It will, to some degree, stop the problem, but it's not fixing the reason why the dog is behaving in that way. So what it will teach the dog to do is not want to learn anymore.
If you've got a question for Hannah, got a dog that needs training, a Christmas pooch, maybe, a little puppy that needs a little bit of guidance, or a dog it's longer in the tooth, but maybe is sort of set in its ways in terms of bad behaviour. 08453 00 9956. You're keen to address, I know, Hannah, some of the sort of the myths around communications then with dogs, such as?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the things that people know inherently about dog training and behaviour have been anecdotal. You know, if you've had dogs or you've grown up with dogs, then you'll tend to treat your dogs the way that your parents treated their dogs, and on and on and on. And to find a source of information about how to approach getting a new dog and working with a new dog is absolutely confused. There's so many different sources of information out there. So a couple of things that I always get asked about. One of them is dogs who roll onto their back. A lot of people say, well, they want their tummy tickled. And that is as basically wrong as you could get. The basis of that behaviour is that the dog is showing you their stomach as if to say, please have mercy on me, you're very big and very scary, I'm giving you my stomach, you could kill me, please don't. And so what the dog's asking you to do is back off. I don't think I've ever seen a dog tickle another dog's tummy. It's not a normal dog behaviour.
When my dog used to that, the lovely Goldie, who's no longer with us, I always used to rub his tummy like that. You say that's not right behaviour then?
The key is that when you've got a puppy and they display that behaviour, the basis of the behaviour is that the dog is a little bit frightened. And what you do with a puppy is you teach them to enjoy having their stomach tickled. So as they get older, they will offer you their tummy to be tickled. But if you take that as common knowledge and apply it to all dogs, you get yourself in trouble. So if you've got a new rescue dog and they show you your stomach, the best thing you can do is actually take a step back and give the dog its space back, and it will relax and start to communicate with you a little bit better. I
tell you what, you've really touched a nerve, you know. The phones have lit up, seriously.
Oh, wow,
we've got so many callers who want to have a chat with you, Hannah. I'm not joking. Let's speak first to Gary in Heath Hayes. Hello, Gary.
Hello, good morning, Adrian.
You're right, mate. Yeah, what do you want to say to Hannah?
Well, I've got a West Island Terrier. She's 15. She suffers with diabetes. And this year, well, last year, actually, she's had to have both her eyes removed. Because of ulcers forming on her eyes, and the vets couldn't cure it. But she started to scratch the carpet at night, during the night, and during the day.
Okay.
And I was wondering if you could give me any tips or any ideas what it might be, please.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the thing to remember is that obviously your Westie's world has just changed. You know, she can't see where you are. She's had a really important sense removed. So what I might do is start to work with. It's probably a little bit of frustration. She's not quite sure where you are. So she's trying to communicate with you as best she can. I would probably start to approach that by looking at ways that you can train her using sounds or even using smells to get her to give an alternative behaviour. But I think that the basis of that comes from frustration. So give her quite a consistent routine. Dogs who've lost their eyesight need to know exactly where everything is. Try and keep your house very, very still.
Does that make sense, Gary? You know, the dog, because she's lost her sight, doesn't know where you are at night.
Yes, what happened is we think one of the symptoms is the day turns round. Night becomes day to her, and day becomes night. She's asleep most of the day, and she's pacing around the bedroom all night and scratching the carpet. We're having to loose her out at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah, and what she's doing is going back into a very natural behaviour pattern. Dogs work best early in the morning and late at night. They're dawn and dusk, just like their ancestors, wolves, are as well. So what she's probably done is revert back to a completely natural pattern of behaviour, which is to be up during the evening. So what I might do is if you can, try and give her a form of exercise or training during the day. I know a lot of people like to leave their dogs to sleep, but the best way that you can get her to settle during the evening is to make sure that she's had plenty of exercise and stimulation during the day.
Sort of effectively rediscipline her into, no, this is day, this is when you've got to, yeah. Gary, I hope that's a bit of help to you. Sounds very sensible to me from Hannah. Stephanie's in Rubery. Hello, Steph.
Hello.
Oh, yeah. What do you want to ask Hannah?
Well, I have a Labrador, and he's crossed with a Retriever, we think, or a German Shepherd.
Oh, lovely.
He'll be 3 on April the 1st.
Okay.
That says all, really. He's completely balmy. But he lives with another dog. I have a German Shepherd and 2 cats. And he's fine. He's an idiot. He's a typical lab. But he hates other dogs.
Okay.
When we go out on the lead, he will literally drag me across the road to get to another dog. The dog can be doing nothing. And he is so aggressive, and he's very strong. And I've tried taking treats out. I've tried standing in front of him to let the people go past and things. If he goes out with anybody else, when my daughter comes to visit, she lives in Dorset, she takes him out, and he's fine. It just seems to be with me.
Okay. So I think what you might want to do is just take a little bit of time to be at home with your dog and have a little look at some of the boundaries that you're setting in your relationship together. It sounds a little bit, if the behaviour is changing with one person to another, it sounds a little bit like he's protecting you. And so for some strange reason, he's come into the idea that he needs to reassure you when you're around other dogs. Naturally, I think when you start to get a dog aggressive problem, people start to preempt the behaviour. So you know that your dog is potentially dog aggressive, so when you see another dog in the distance, you tense up, you tense the lead up, you tighten your dog closer to you, and all of that tension, the dog instantly goes, what's the problem? What is it? That guy over there? Right, okay, I'll get it, don't worry, you just calm down. So I think what we really need to do is take it right back to boundary work and have a little look at the relationship that you have with him at home. Is he always asking you for things, or are you asking more from him than he's asking from you? That's where I would start with this. And then I think for me, it would be about building your confidence to know a management strategy when you do see another dog, how to get your dog to learn that actually it's much more beneficial to just come away with me, buddy. We'll just go over here and we'll just calm down.
And how do you do that? Because I used to have a dog-aggressive dog, if you like. So, even if Stephanie sort of, sets the boundaries at home and they're clear, how do you stop a dog who's, might want to have a scrap with another dog from doing that when you're out?
The key is to teach an appropriate alternative behaviour. With all of the behaviour problems that I see every day, I ask every client, what would you rather your dog did instead? That's the way to look at it. Rather than stopping the behaviour, what would you prefer they did instead? So I think a really great alternative to a dog lunging, barking or dragging you towards another dog would be to sit and watch you. So give you eye contact and sit. And then it's about looking at the distance away from the other dog that your dog can start to concentrate. If you're too close and your dog's saying, I can't concentrate, all I'm thinking about is that other dog, then make some more distance until your dog starts to communicate with you again. And I'd work from there and build up the distance between you and that other dog.
How about that, Steph? That's a pointer or two, isn't it?
Yes.
Okey-doke,
I mean, I think to begin with, the problem was just after I got him, I broke my wrist, which meant I couldn't take him out as much, although he is lead trained. I have him on a halter collar, which really works well. And maybe it's because he hasn't socialised, although he does live with the other dog.
The other thing, Steph, to bear in mind is that because he is working with and living with another dog every day, there will be interactions between your two dogs that you won't have complete control over all the time. I would make sure that your other dog isn't doing anything that your aggressive dog might consider to be bullying. So some dogs will play quite roughly at home because they get a bit bored. So if you're finding that the shepherd is maybe jumping on top of the lab quite a lot, stealing things from him, frustrating him, that's going to add to his insecurity. Or alternatively, maybe the shepherd is a little bit worried as well, and so your lab is feeling like he needs to protect not only you but also the shepherd that he lives with as well. But by all means, do give us a ring and we can come round and have a little look into the problem a little bit more deeply for you.
OK, thanks very much. Julian Wolverhampton says, we're expecting our first baby in a few months. We've two very lively, although well-behaved and trained, mid-sized rescue dogs, Collie and Labrador. We're wondering the best way to introduce the baby and the dogs together.
That is a great question and one that comes up really, really often. I think, you really do need to take your time when it comes to prepping your dogs for the arrival of a new baby. And the thing to bear bear in mind is that we need to have, as I say, boundaries set in place. I think it's really great to teach each of those dogs to go to bed on command. So have 2 separate beds for separate dogs and teach each of them on command to go to bed. Okay, I would get them to go to bed when guests come round, and I would get them to go to bed while you mock up holding a baby and sitting on the sofa, so that the dog isn't getting actively involved with you fussing with something new. Often dogs get their noses pushed out when there is a new baby. You know, it's one of those things. We can also provide you with a socialisation CD, so it's got some noises and strange sounds like babies crying, you know, and all of the weird noises that dogs need to get used to when it comes to having a new baby in the house, and teaching your dog that actually when they hear those sounds, positive things happen. So I'd use treats at the same time as hearing loud babies crying, teaching the dog that while it's lying in its bed, when those noises are happening, still lots of lovely good things are happening. Collies especially can be incredibly sensitive to noise, really strange noises and changes in the environment. So take it really gently, really slowly, and introduce the sounds and sights really, really gently.
Let's speak to Nick in Shirley. Hello, Nick.
Hello there.
Welcome, Nick. Yeah.
We're just about to pick up a Springer Spaniel from the dog rescue place, but they've told us that he's still wetting, you know, not house trained, although he's like 2 years old.
Yeah, okay.
Just how to get that round that really, because we never really had a puppy as such.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, really good question. I think the thing to remember, I used to work for the Dogs Trust, so when it comes to dog rescue, I really do understand that it can be an incredibly stressful process. The thing to bear in mind is that dogs will only wee somewhere that they feel comfortable. Okay, so you want to set up a really secure environment that your dog can go to the toilet outside, and you need to keep repeatedly taking them outside at the times when they're likely to need a wee in order to encourage them. When you take your dog outside, try and give them a command like wee wee, cross your arms and just ignore them. And if you leave them for long enough, they'll have a little sniff around, and the smells will get them excited and they will go to the toilet. It might take it up to an hour sometimes, I'm not going to lie.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
But try and just be really understanding that obviously they're going to be getting to know your environment. You will have a couple of accidents in the house. I think the best way to look at it is don't ever discipline or punish your dog for going to the toilet in the house, because they really don't understand that that is wrong. And although we might think it makes perfect sense to say, that's naughty, do not wee in my house, all the dog learns is, do not wee in front of me, because I will shout at you.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that's the key with it, I would say.
Yeah.
But just be really consistent with it and keep taking her outside at the times that they're likely to need the loo, when they've just woken up, when they've just had something exciting like a new guest, just after they've eaten, and also reward them for weeing outside. If you pay your dog in sausage or chicken every time they wee outside, they're going to go, hey, you know what, this is maths. If I go outside and have a wee, I get paid. Whereas if I do it inside, nothing happens.
Nicky, Shirley, I hope that's useful for you. Hannah, we've got so many calls for you today. We're definitely going to have to get you back in and speak to you again if you're happy with that.
Yeah, by all means. Thank you, Adrian.
So many people want to talk to you about their dogs. Hannah Molloy here from Pawfect Dogsense in Kings Heath. We'll get through as many calls as we possibly can. Kay in Kings Heath says, my Jack Russell Biscuit, I think that's the name of the dog, barks madly. If anyone talks to me, he's 4.
Interesting, yeah. Really, really common issue, actually, amazingly so. I've had a couple of clients who have a similar problem when they're on the phone talking to somebody else. Now, the key to remember is that dogs will do what works, okay? Dogs love your attention. That's all they want all day, every day, is for you to be working with and talking to them. So you need to ask yourself what your dog is doing to get attention. If they're barking at you and you're turning around and looking at them and going, shut up, they've still got your attention, okay? So we need to look at the behaviour of barking and say, that's not going to work anymore. If you bark at me, I'm going to turn my eye contact away, cross my arms and ignore you. If you keep barking at me, I'm going to walk out of the room, because that's just not going to work. And then the other key is to look at an alternative behaviour again. So if the dog stops barking and sits, that would be a good opportunity to maybe click and reward. I use clicker training because I think it's a really good training aid.
What's clicker training?
Clicker training is another form of reward-based training that basically marks the second that a dog does something really clever. This is a clicker. I've got one with me. It makes a click-clock noise.
That's all it is, a little blue... object.
Little sort of strange...
Sits in your palm.
Yeah, easy peasy. And what we do with clicker training is we teach the dog that this sound means that they're going to get a food reward. Okay, so we teach the dog by clicking and treating and clicking and treating and clicking and treating. When they hear this, they've done something genius. And then they can use that to build on a behaviour. So if I've taught my dog that when it sits, I click and treat it, The next time it sits, I'm going to ask for a beat of 2 seconds and then click and treat. And the key is that the clicker becomes harder and harder to earn, okay? So it's a really great marker of behaviour. It's not going to create a well-behaved dog. It's just a tool, but it's a great one for dogs to work with. So,
Pauline Hales Owen, go on, mate.
Yeah, it's a bit of an embarrassing one, really, because I do dog training myself.
Okay.
I've got my partner's collie. She was into the house, and when she lived on her own with it used to fly out the back door and run down the garden.
Yeah.
When she moved in with me 12 months ago, I managed to stop it doing it, but it started doing it again. And it literally runs on the same path, border collie, flies down the garden, barking its head off.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what I do, it still does it.
What? And that's just when your missus comes in?
No, it just, as soon as you open the back door to let it out, it just flies down the garden.
Oh, right. So instead of just having instead of having a little saunter out and a cock of the leg, it runs off like a mad thing.
Yes, it absolutely flies. I've even got one of my other dogs and put one of those, which is a bit more aggressive, in between. And it stops him. But he literally, he'll stand on the outside of the back door, wait for them to move, and then as soon as they've moved, wallop straight away down.
Yeah, interesting, Paul. Really interesting, Paul. I mean, I think what I would look at is what it is your collie is focusing on. Bear in mind, you've got really high, as you know from dog training, collies are incredibly work-driven, and they need a particular task to do every day. If you don't give your dog, or any dog, a job to do, then they start to create their own, a little bit like humans, really. If we're bored and we haven't got any work to do, we start to create work for ourselves. So I think it sounds a little bit like the stimulus of when you open that door is getting the collie so excited they can't contain themselves, and they're just burning a lot of energy just pegging it straight down the garden. What I would probably start to do is work with the collie really nicely and calmly and teach a sit and wait as the door opens, and teach a sit and wait, and then with a lead on, encourage the collie to come into the garden with you, and again, sit and wait on the other side of the door, and then maybe take the collie on a walk around the garden and give them something else to do, have a game, have a tug. But there may be, I mean, it's very difficult without me observing the behaviour, but there's something that is stimulating that excessive sort of excitement and need to go and run down the end of the garden. Again, give us a bell if I can come round and have a look-see, and I might be able to be a little bit more helpful.
Yeah, last one for today on this. We've got so many people wanting advice from Hannah Molloy. Joy in Sedgley. Hello, Joy.
Hello, Adrian.
You all right?
Joy.
Yes, hello, Hannah.
Hiya.
I've got a dog, Double Doe, crossed with a bulldog.
Ooh, fun.
Lovely creature she is, very loving.
Yeah.
Right, she loves people, loves other dogs.
Okay.
When I take her out, she wriggles to get out of her reins to join other dogs to play.
Yeah.
And she's quite willful, and I have let her off. She's panicked if I sort of carry on walking, and she'll run to me.
Yeah.
But getting her back on, she's a little madam. She's 2 now, but she wants to do what she wants to do, and I've tried the clicker, I've tried the treats.
Sure.
Oh, and she will only... It's so difficult to get her back in that harness and back on that lead.
Go on, then let Anna have a go at that then, Joy.
So what I would probably do, Joy, is just bear in mind how rewarding it is for dogs to be let off leads and to go and socialise with other dogs. That's a massive honour. You know, that's a lot of trust that you give your dog every time you do that. So what I would probably do is break it down again into separate training tasks. So when you take your dog to the park, the key for her is that if she's not calm enough, if I put a lead on a dog and it starts to get really overexcited, the first thing I'll do is take the lead off and put it back down again, because quite simply you don't get the reward of going for a walk unless you can be calm. Same with your dog. I wouldn't give them the reward of getting to socialise with other dogs unless I knew that they were calm and then they were listening to me, you know. So what you might be able to do...
So as owners, we often respond to the excitement of the dog.
Absolutely.
When my dog used to get excited about going for a walk, I'd ramp it up.
Yeah, you do. You're like, wicked
come
walks.
on, yeah.
Exactly.
But no.
Well, I think once you let your dog get into an emotional head state, they stop learning. That's the key with it, really. So what I would do under your circumstances, my lovely, is pop a long line on the dog, okay? So like a training lead, you can get them between 5 metres and 25 metres long. So no matter what experiences they're having and you want to let them off lead, you've always got a really long trailing lead, and up to 25 metres away from them, you could pick that up and control her and pop her back on lead. Also look at what happens when you call her back to you. If every time you call her back to you, you put her straight back on lead, she's naturally going to go, I don't want to come back to you. That's the end of the walk. So maybe call her to you a couple of times and give her a lovely treat, and then let her go and socialise again, and sort of add a go play command is what I would do. Call the dog, grab it by the collar, give it something lovely and say go play, and keep repeating that so that they learn actually it's much more fun to keep coming back to you and saying hi.
Hannah, it's been fabulous having you in. Thank you. Hannah Molloy from Pawfect Dogsense in Kings Heath. We will definitely have Hannah back on a future occasion. So many people really keen to speak to him. Great to hear from him, and some good sense coming out there as well.